Good afternoon, everyone. Again, my name is Tamiko Allen Grant. I am the Executive Director for the Office of Equity and Inclusion and Professional Standards, and I'm also your District Title IX Coordinator. So I'm excited about this presentation and to provide this information to our parents and families as it is critical, and it's also something that we've been trying to get out for a while. So I'm very excited about presenting it to you today. So we'll go ahead and dive right in. Many of you may have heard of Title IX before, so we want to just talk specifically about it and then allow you to ask any questions that you might have. So the objectives for today's presentation. So this presentation is designed, we want to promote awareness and understanding about the Title IX regulations. Title IX is a federal law, and so any institution that receives uh, uh, funding or federal funding is required to follow those regulations. So we will explore, why was Title IX legislation enacted? Title IX is 50 years old as of last year. Who does Title IX protect? What criteria are used to determine if Title IX applies? When and where should Title IX violations be reported? And how should the district respond to Title IX allegation reports? So why was Title IX legislation enacted? So Title IX, as I stated, it's a federal law. It's a civil rights law, and it was passed by Congress in 1972. And it consists of 32 words, which we'll talk about in a minute. But in 1972, and it required equality for both genders in education. So it prohibits sex-based discrimination in educational institutions that receive federal funds. And it reads as follows. No person in the United States shall, based on sex, be excluded from participating in, being denied the benefits of, or being subjected to discrimination under any education program or activity. It's a short, small paragraph, short sentence, but there's a lot of impact in that. Many of you may have heard of Title IX or be more familiar with it as it relates to athletics, in terms of if there's one sports team for males, there has to be another sports team for females. But of course, over the years, Title IX has expanded, and here we are now. Title IX also includes sexual and gender-based harassment and sexual violence. So who does Title IX protect? All students, families, employees, and community members, regardless of their gender identity or expression, participating in programs, activities, and services sponsored by Duval County Public Schools are subject to and protected by the provisions of Title IX. That means all of our families, any stakeholders, any vendors or contractors, all of those people are protected by Title IX protections and if they're engaging in a Duval County Public School activity. So what criteria are used to determine whether Title IX applies? When we receive a Title IX allegation, we're looking for a few things. So Title IX applies to allegations that meet the following criteria. The conduct in question meets the definition of sexual harassment. The conduct occurred in a DCPS education program or activity. The conduct occurred against a person in the United States. And all those are critical. And if all those are in place, the criteria that meets the requirements for a Title IX allegation. So if the requirements are met, then schools must follow the Title IX grievance process. If any one of these requirements or elements is missing, then Title IX does not apply. It doesn't mean that a particular infraction will not be investigated or it will not be handled with, but it may be handled with in another area, such as either student code of conduct. It may be considered a student code of conduct violation if it does not meet these criteria. So now we're going to talk a little bit about what that definition of sexual harassment means. So in terms of Title IX, Title IX regulations define sexual harassment as conduct based on sex that satisfies one or more of the following. For instance, an employee conditioning the provision or aid of a benefit or service of the recipient on an individual's participation in unwelcome sexual conduct. For instance, this for that. So if an employee is asking for something of a sexual nature. We call that quid pro quo, and that is unacceptable, and that could be considered sexual harassment. Unwelcome conduct determined by a reasonable person that is so severe, pervasive, and objectively offensive. And a little acronym that we use to remember that is called SPOOF: severe, pervasive, and objectively offensive. And it has to meet all of those criteria. And as you can tell, that's a pretty high bar. Um, Sexual assault, as defined by the Clery Act, it could be dating violence, domestic violence, or stalking, as defined by the Violence Against Women Act. Dating violence and domestic violence, they are a little bit different. So dating violence is considered by any people who have dated or are currently dating or may have dated in the past. Domestic violence, obviously, it's people who are living in a family unit or coexisting together. They may or may not be related, but they may be in a living situation. And stalking is the only one of these offenses that has to occur more than one time. And so stalking could involve a variety of things, but it's repetitive behavior that is sexual in nature for purposes of Title IX and sexual harassment. Sexual harassment includes unwelcome conduct of a sexual nature, which is prohibited by Title IX. So here we have a list of some of the most common areas where we see Title IX violations occur. So unwelcome touching of a sexual nature, making sexual gestures or sexual jokes or comments, calling students or adults sexually charged names, sexual advances, requests for sexual favors, circulating or showing or creating emails, texts, or websites of a sexual nature, and verbal, nonverbal, or physical contact of a sexual nature. Now, earlier we talked about as one of the criteria being an event that happens during a Duval County Public School education program or activity. And so an education program or activity is broadly defined to include locations, events, or circumstances over which DCPS exercises substantial control. And that's key: substantial control over both the respondent and in a Title IX situation, the person bringing the complaint is called the complainant, and the person whom it's brought against is called the respondent. I just wanted to clarify since that language was there. And the context in which sexual harassment occurs, whether on or off DCPS property. So here are some examples of DCPS education programs or activities. Academic or educational programs. That includes virtual classes and activities. So during the pandemic, and a lot of you may have had classes on Teams, or your students had classes on Teams. That is considered a DCPS education program or activity. Extracurricular programs, such as clubs that meet after school, extended day programs, athletics events, school dances, field trips, and other school-related programs, including activities in school facilities, on school buses, training programs, and classes that could be sponsored by the district. So when and where should Title IX violations be reported? Reports of conduct that may be in violation of Title IX may be submitted at any time, including during non-business hours, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We have a Title IX email box that you can send any allegations to. A report can be made in person. It can be made by telephone, by mail or email, or even fax to the school-based or district Title IX coordinator, or by other means that result in the Title IX coordinator receiving the reporter's verbal or written report. And so let me clarify one thing. So the way that our district is set up, as I introduced myself, I told you I'm the district Title IX coordinator. But as you know, we have over 150 schools in our district. So each school has an assistant principal, and the assistant principal is usually the designated Title IX coordinator. So I encourage all parents and families to ensure that you know who the Title IX coordinator is at your student's campus. Oral reports should be transcribed into a written form. Title IX allegation reporting forms are available at the Title IX coordinator's office and on the district's website at the link provided. Allegations of sexual harassment against an administrator may be reported directly to me, the district Title IX coordinator, in our office. How should the district respond to Title IX allegation reports? So in terms of Title IX, and because it's a federal law and we receive federal funds, we are required to respond to Title IX allegations. The first step is when we receive that report of sexual harassment. The Title IX coordinator will generally review that document, and if it meets Title IX criteria, the Title IX coordinator will conduct initial meetings with the parties, clarify the allegations, and explain what the rights and supportive measures are for the respondent and the complainant. Excuse me. I want to explain a little bit about that initial meeting. So when we receive a Title IX allegation that meets that criteria, it's important that we put in supportive measures for both the complainant and the respondent, because Title IX is about access. We want to make sure that our students and employees have access to their education environment, or for an employee, their workplace. So often we'll put supportive measures in place in discussion with those parties to make sure that they feel safe and that they have the appropriate access to their educational facility or to the workplace. The complainant or victim has the right, and they will be notified during that initial meeting, that they have the right to file a formal written complaint. So it's a couple of different steps. The first, the reporting, is the allegation reporting form, and then if the complainant decides to file a formal complaint, they have 60 days from the date of the incident to do so. After the Title IX coordinator has determined if Title IX applies, if the Title IX office does, if Title IX does apply, the parties will receive written notice of the complaint. That means it will go to both parties. If Title IX does not apply, the complaint will be dismissed, and a dismissal can be appealed. If Title IX applies, the case is then assigned to a Title IX investigator. The Title IX investigator then conducts investigative interviews, they collect evidence, and then they draft an investigative report. The evidence and the investigative report will be shared with the parties per the federal regulation. Title IX is separated in such a way that we want to make sure that there is separation between the processes so that there is no appearance of impropriety. So for instance, the Title IX coordinator can serve as the coordinator and the investigator. And once they draft that report and provide that evidence to the parties, that evidence is then provided to the decision maker, a completely separate, different individual who ultimately makes a decision on the facts and the evidence. The Title IX decision maker facilitates a question and answer exchange between the parties before rendering a decision based on the evidence summarized in the investigative report. So what that means is the parties will be given an opportunity to ask questions about that investigative report. And the decision maker will actually look at those questions, and they'll decide whether or not they are relevant to the case at hand or not. And if they are relevant, then they'll provide an explanation. Title IX, the decision maker will send a written determination to the parties, and the parties do have a right to appeal. If either of the parties appeal, the appellate decision maker, who again will be a completely different person than the decision maker, will render a final determination. The appeal is final. So how can Title IX infractions be prevented? What can parents and students do? Parents and families can play a positive role in reinforcing good behaviors in their students by reminding them of a few tips to help them be successful. And just so you're aware, we go through this same training with all of our employees, staff, and vendors so that they're aware of this same information. All of this information also is applicable, and it applies on our website. So we want our students and everyone in our schools to use positive language when speaking to one another. So use positive language when speaking to other students, faculty, or staff. Do not touch students, faculty, or staff. Stick with high fives and fist bumps. Do not make jokes or gestures that may cause others to feel uncomfortable. Do not distribute pictures or inappropriate text messages electronically or in any other form. Do not make sexual advances towards students, faculty, or staff. Do not abuse bus privileges by engaging in lewd or sexual behaviors on bus transportation. Do not go into secluded area with students, faculty, or staff unless trusted adults are present. And report inappropriate conduct to your school-based Title IX coordinator. Reporting is the best way that we can control incidents that happen and ensure that everyone has access to a safe environment. And as I stated earlier, I am your district Title IX coordinator. And here is the telephone number that you can reach our office, as well as my email address in the event you need to contact me via email or by phone.
We are here to serve. If you've got any other topics that you would like us to address, never hesitate to reach out. We are here for you. Dr. Grant, do you have anything else you'd like to add before we wrap it up?
Yes, I too want to thank everyone for their time and their attention today. Please be sure to utilize our office, the Office of Equity and Inclusion and Professional Standards, if you need to reach us. Again, please avail yourself on your student's campus about who their Title IX coordinator is and encourage them to feel comfortable reporting that information. And again, if there's any information that needs to be reported, please feel free to contact me directly.
All right. Thank you for joining us, everyone. I hope you have a wonderful day.